What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back with another superstar from the from combat sports. Alan Belcher joins us on today's show. He is the current BKFC heavyweight champion, and of course, you all got to know him through our show when we covered him as a mixed martial artist in the UFC's middleweight division. Welcome back, Alan. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me back. Appreciate you guys.
Congratulations on your recent win. We'll get to that in a second, but we're very, very happy for you. You know, as you research these interviews, you go back and kind of try and put the pieces together because, as you know, there's a lot of promotions, there's a lot of fighters, everyone's jumping around everywhere. It's really hard to keep track. And I'm like 38 years old. I was expecting to see 40 something. And then you start putting the math together. You left MMA at 29. Mm-hmm. And now you've come back and boxed, and now you're a bare knuckle fighting championship champion. That's simply amazing, honestly, because it's such a long time in between, when you were done with MMA. And I remember the eye injury, and I also remember you telling us in an interview you would lay down flat, like on a massage table with all the lights out after a surgery you had because it was just too much. So it all started coming back to me, but anyway, I mean, I guess we'll go with BKFC. That's what just happened. Congratulations. Yeah. How are you feeling? Is this a big redemption to the decision you made 10 years ago?
Yeah, it really is, man. Leaving the sport, kind of didn't sit right with me. So after thinking about it for several years, age 36, 37, I got to thinking like, well, now I think would be the time if I'm going to make this decision, let's do it. So I decided to fully go for it. And the last, the year building up to my first fight, and then the last 2 years of fighting, and, over the course of the last 2 years, fighting 9 times, my intensity levels and my level of commitment has increased to a point to where going into this championship fight was like, man, this is not only 2 years in the making. This is 19 years as a professional fighter in the making. This is right at 30 years of practicing martial arts since my first day walking into a dojo at 8 years old, practicing karate, and deciding that I wanted to be a fighter and a martial artist and professional. That's what I wanted to do full time. I knew that as a kid. So all that building up to it, I just got to a point where I'm like, this is something you got to fully go for, lean into, and take that leap into greatness. Not just try hard, but what is your potential? And going into this fight, I knew that it could be a war, it could be a dramatic fight, and it turned out to kind of be both of those. So I got everything that I wished for out of it. And this was the first kind of stage in my comeback, is like, just keep boxing for practice, building up your boxing record. I broke into the top 100 in professional boxers in the world. I became the number 1 ranked guy in BKFC, and the goal from the beginning was whoever has the belt, by the time I get it in the 4th fight on this contract, I want to be fighting for the belt. And then once I get the bare knuckle belt, then that's going to open up doors and kind of, be like my, an opportunity to do some really big things in the sport. So here we are, and I got the belt, and it's a dream come true, man. It's a lifetime goal. This is my first world championship. This is my first big pressure event, which I believe it's the illusion of all the pressure and all the build up and the title, and everything that makes it such a kind of challenge, So it's been fun, man. So I'm just looking forward to going forward.
Well, way to not give up on yourself. It's truly an amazing story to leave one sport and then 10 years later reach the pinnacle of another sport especially after serious injuries. And then there's so much irony, the eye poke against Bisping, against the guy who wound up winning a title.
Yeah.
And it cost him an eye as well, those last few fights,
Yeah.
and then, you deciding to come back. I read some stories. You got bigger. You definitely weren't a middleweight after you retired, and you were able to shake all that off. All that in what may have been the prime of your career. Think about it, 28, 29 when you leave MMA. Now you're matching the mental game. You're a smart MMA fighter, and you got the physical tools as you get into your early 30s, which is kind of like an athlete's prime. And you decide, no, that's when I'm not going to be competing. And you come back in your upper 30s and you win the championship. Again, I'm boggled by all this. It's amazing, but I'm stoked. I mean, this is a great, inspiring story for a lot of athletes who are just like what you told us at the beginning. Man, if I'm going to do something, I got to do it now. And this is a strong message to them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It really is, man. Yeah, it's been a fun ride, man. So it's just, I'm looking forward to what's next. This is, it's been no walk in the park, reinventing myself as a boxer and a knockout artist. This is, I don't plan on not knocking out any opponent that I have in the future. I'm sticking to that plan. That's something that I've had kind of since the beginning. Was like, you go into these fights, get them over with as soon as there's an opening, take as little damage as possible, and become a knockout artist. And also, it's a fight game too. It's a business, and there's just as much value in creating a story and creating a spectacle as there is in who is actually the best. So I'm interested in being the best, but I do understand that the opportunity is only going to be there if I have some type of special interest in myself, and so there's the whole story of taking off and then coming back against the odds, and there's been a lot of people that believe in me, but also there's a lot of people that haven't believed in me too. So I've used that as fuel, and so now being heavyweight champion of the world in bare knuckle, I really feel like there's going to be some big names, some big money paydays of hopefully someone in boxing or MMA taking off the gloves and coming in and challenging me for my belt, Francis Ngannou or, whoever, there's a couple guys like Usyk and Andy Ruiz, Tyson Fury, this type of thing. These are the type of big name fights that I would like to see happen in by the end of 2023, 2024.
I got a feeling there's some headed your way, and I don't want to harp on it, but just the last one from me on this topic, and then I know Goes has a few for you. That is a serious injury that you had that forced you to retire from MMA. How often do you look after yourself? Is it after every fight, after every week? Your eye injuries, and is it anything that was ever mental in regards to it? I recall, like, for example, Josh Koscheck, every time he even got close, it would mess with him in the middle of a fight. So I knew a lot of it could be just mental as well as physical. Yeah. So can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a lot mental. Now physically, I mean, I feel like it took me several years to just get a real kind of like grasp on my eyesight and my peripheral vision and everything. That something wasn't right for a few years. So I know that what I was feeling at the time was right. I really didn't need to be fighting at the time. But just like my doctor that did the surgery told me, that it was just an adjustment of my brain to, so I really haven't had any physical issues. I definitely, going into a fight, you have to do a lot of, you have to do the dilated eye exam, which is looking at the retina. So we follow every safety precaution and then some. I'm not doing this recklessly at all. And my skill set, like I work, triple time in the gym, and because I want to be skillful and try to avoid some damage. Of course, I have a black eye and a cut on my eye right now talking to you guys, but I was also just in a fight with the for a heavyweight world title, so to be expected. But yeah, a lot of it was mental, man. I was at a point in my career where I was cutting tremendous amounts of weight, weighing 220 pounds, cut down to 185. And the studies, research, and everything shows now that the effects on your hormones, the effects on your health and your mental health and your brain, and all those types of things. So I was just in a place where I wanted to go to the top as fast as I could. And with the eye injuries and the just kind of like the ups and the downs and everything, mentally, I wasn't in a good spot. And unfortunately, I couldn't fix the problem at the time. So I really, as I pursued other ventures in business and just everything that I was doing outside of it, just working on myself and working on my family, I started to improve myself in any way that I could, and I learned a lot about myself. A lot of people in their 20s understand who they are, but then there's a lot that don't understand that later, so I had to kind of, find myself, if you will. And, and it all just kind of worked out like a beautiful movie, and this mission that I've been on the last couple of years has just been awesome self-discovery. And yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Alan, you've been able to accomplish some great things in mixed martial arts, even boxing, but winning a world title, where does that rank for you in your life and your accomplishments?
Well, it's definitely a thing that's on my list, when I look at my career, trying to go for a UFC title. I was close a couple times to getting a shot at it. But that's just one thing that you just kind of think, man. And being a very, serious athlete that is very, very focused on what they're doing, the title is, that's, we all dream of, like, you have to believe that's your title, that's your belt that you're going after. So not achieving that is something that you can definitely understand and comprehend and get over. But if there's a little bit inside of you, in your heart, that still has some left and you can physically do it, there's you kind of always use that as like a marker, so I definitely wanted to win a world championship. That's always been something, a big goal for me. So yeah, man, I feel like it's just something that to achieve it is almost like now I've ascended to another level. I'm a new person. I'm a new level of confidence. And it definitely doesn't feel like it wasn't earned or it's not legitimate or anything. I really feel like I worked hard and now I'm the best heavyweight bare knuckle fighter in the world.
So we've been trying to rack our brains as to who could be next, because there's a lot of good names and there's names outside of BKFC that could possibly come in. Do you feel like you have a feeling who it could be next? And do you also feel like you're probably just going to get to them all at some point?
Yeah, I think that's the plan, is to clean out the division and just continue to beat, the guys that are in there. There's some good competition. There's Mick Terrell and there's Ben Rothwell. I feel like those are a top couple of guys. The heavyweight division hasn't been like super busy, so there's not anyone that's on a really hot streak against really top competition. I'm just excited to kind of see who it is. My big prediction, I think, is going to be there's going to be outside names come in that's going to shed even more light on the bare knuckle sport and just give more impact and more notoriety to what we're doing over there.
You did bring up a name that got me thinking. It was Francis Ngannou. And whenever a fighter brings up a name, I kind of play the fight out in my head right away. So I think Francis Ngannou, big, heavy hands. But you did something years ago. You kind of tricked us, and I'll tell you why. You were fighting Husamar Palhares, and we were all thinking, all right, how's this fight going to go? And you told everyone, screw this. I'm going to the ground with him, and I'm going to attack his legs. A guy like Francis Ngannou, it doesn't matter that he's a heavy hitter. I think you're going to be right in his face throwing bombs as well. Am I close here, or have you already played that out in your head, how that fight would go?
Yeah, I mean, it's the matter of not getting hit. So I in all 9 of my comeback fights, I've only been legitimately rocked maybe once or twice where I felt like it had kind of affected my brain, like any type of like a concussion, I guess you could say, because that's basically what's happening whenever you drop someone, you knock them out, you're giving them a concussion, you're bouncing their brain off their skull. So, especially bare knuckle fighting, it's a matter of not getting your brain bounced off your skull and bouncing the other guy's brain off his skull. That's really all. To me, I'm not trying to win by a cut, and I'm not trying to win by a decision. That's not how you play this game. You have, like, I'm strong. I'm not as big as Francis Ngannou, but I have tendon strength. I've worked on my punches. I've been punching things, since I was a kid. So I have a nice punch. It's plenty enough, I promise you, to knock out Francis Ngannou. And someone that sees a big person with big hands, with big swinging and everything, they think, wow, how can you beat someone like that? And I promise you, it is not a problem to knock someone out of that size. It's just they do not have any special power in their head. If you hit them on the chin, their jaw is either going to break or their chin is going to twist and they're going to go down. Can Francis Ngannou hit me solid? I haven't been hit in the chin in any of my fights. So, I mean, we're going on, since probably back in the UFC. I haven't got hit really, really solid, connected. That's what I call it. When I do sparring, when I fight or when I spar, that's the word that I use. Like, the guy didn't connect on me. Like, that's what I'm trying to do, is to keep them from connecting a shot on me. And it hasn't happened, and I keep my eyes open. I'm a skilled fighter. Even whenever I'm getting punched in the eye and getting cut on my eyebrow, I'm very aware of, like, what the position of my head and where my eyes are. So I don't believe that Francis Ngannou can knock me out, and I believe that I can knock him out. And when you're talking about bare knuckle boxing, that's the name of the game. It's definitely, you might can imagine somebody trying to move around and be a smaller fighter, but only thing I would do is with a fight like that is I would avoid probably trying to wrestle him, and that's not really my style. But if you saw in the championship fight against Adams, whenever I needed to, I grabbed him by his head and I landed uppercuts and I dominated in the clinch. So I feel like I'm good in the clinch. But I wouldn't be trying to wrestle around Francis Ngannou. I would keep my arms in and sting him a few times, and he would go down just like the rest of them.
Interesting. All right. Just a couple follow-ups here. Do you still follow MMA?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What did you think of, like, when I was watching Hooker versus Puelles, or when I've watched anyone fight Ryan Hall, as we preview the fight, like Ghost said, we mentioned your approach to the fight, because Husamar was obviously a beast with the leg locks. And right. I told the story, I believe it was Dean Lister, that you flew in and you buttoned up your game, and then you said, not only am I going to be ready for him, I'm going to attack him. And you could tell in the middle of the fight, it messed with Palhares. So we reference your fight a lot, but I guess one of the most recent ones was Hooker versus Puelles. Did you happen to catch that one? And what did you think of Hooker's approach? Because he looked calm and comfortable, like prepared.
I didn't see that one, but I did hear about it, and I understand the mentality and the mindset behind it, which is when you have the intention and the focus on something, you've already put yourself there mentally, right? And if you've put yourself there physically, you've put yourself there mentally, then that's what it takes. Once it becomes there, it's like a dream, and it's like, okay, it's happening. I'm right here and I'm doing it. There's no surprise. It's all about mental clarity, and I think that fighters are starting to figure it out, and even fans are starting to see that that the fight sport is much more than a brawl or a battle of will, which that has a tremendous amount to do with it. But it's about controlling your brain and your thoughts and what you're thinking of. Like, you can be your worst enemy in there, or you can be your best coach in there. So I think it's all about whatever you focus on, and some people just rise to that occasion. Maybe Hooker is like that. But I remember the fight. I remember still the call that I had with Joe Silva when he asked me to fight Paul Yaris. And I was oftentimes in my career, I wasn't motivated to fight some people, and I just needed something. I knew that it was all about heart to me. Like, money was never the thing for me, or even focusing on just getting a win to go to the next level. I needed to have something to kind of hang on to going into that fight that I knew that was going to light a fire. So I remember when Joe Silva asked me to fight Paul Yaris, it was a yes. Like, I know that's a fight that I'm going to win because I feel fear right now. And I love that. When I feel that fear, like when I think of fighting Francis Ngannou, is probably the only person out there right now that just seems kind of scary. And that's a good thing, because all of that fear can be focused into your technique and into your skill set and into your concentration, which is the biggest thing with fighting is concentration. And I feel like a lot of my success now is because of the amount of focus that I put into the mental. I meditate every single day, multiple times a day. Meditation has been a huge thing for me. I wish I would have had it in my younger days when I was fighting in the UFC. But meditation allows me to control my nervous system and control my brain, and to focus and concentrate on what is needed to be there. And most of the people who lose out there, they're losing their fight, not because they're not as good as the other person, because they lose focus on what they need to do in the fight. And they start thinking about the negative thing, the blood that's coming down, or the takedown, or the round that they just lost, or the possibility of what could happen, the fear of losing, the fear of failure, the fear of maybe getting hit, or whatever it is, right? And these thoughts in your head, they don't need to be there. They're just in the way. You need to be in a complete flow. You need to be in your comfortable, not thinking just an athlete, a martial artist, just reacting and delivering the techniques that you can in a very pure way. And the brain up here and the thoughts, they don't need to be there. They need to be out of there.
I love it. I feel like I'm talking to Spaniard from Gladiator. You kind of look like Russell Crowe in that movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but he had to think quick a couple of times. I recently watched it when that tiger was coming at him and he had to shove the sword in him. And then when he was fighting Tigress of Gaul with the legendary gladiator who had never lost, he was getting his ass kicked. And then, bam, he stabbed him in the foot. High-speed, human chest, quick thinking. He got it done. Yeah. He wasn't even the biggest dude. But the beard, man, right now you look like Russell Crowe from Gladiator. And as you're talking.
You can't stop to think. You can't stop to think.
Yeah. All right. So Ben Rothwell, you mentioned him, and Ben's been on our show, full transparency. We know him pretty well. Yeah. And he had a great debut. I don't think you can, dispute that. He's a pretty marketable name. I think he's perfect for bare knuckle. And so he's now on social media saying, hey, I want to fight. He wants to fight in April. where does that sit with you? And then also, with us covering the sport for a long time, I know he did time at Militich. I know he's got his own gym, but he's a Wisconsin guy, and you were at Rufus Sport for a few years. Did you guys know each other well, train a lot? I don't know. Did you cross paths or not?
We trained together a few times. Me and Big Ben. Of course, I was a middleweight and he was a heavyweight, so it was kind of like, hey, I don't want to go with Ben. He's gonna hurt me or something. But yeah, we ended up having some good sparring sessions. I don't remember too much of it, but I just always remember that Ben is a tough guy. He's a good guy. He won his first one in bare knuckle, so best of luck in the future to him. In his next fight coming up, I think he needs another win. I'm not the person to put a number on that of what it is, but I mean, I would say if he continues to get knockouts and do well, then he's on his way to a title shot. At this point, man, I'm just looking for challenge. I'm just looking for challenges. Number one, number two, which is a very close second, is payday. So that's where I am right now. I've worked hard to become a heavyweight world champion, and that's what I'm thinking, man. Is I need to challenge. I need something that's really going to light a fire and get me on my top game, and it needs to be something that it's going to make sense, exposure wise and financially, big paydays. So I believe I've earned it. So, I'm looking at big paydays from now on.
Most definitely. And that was a very classy response about your former teammate.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now you're thinking challenge and money. And lastly, is this a decision that ultimately is made by BKFC and David Feldman, or does he lean on you? Like, do you have input on who your next opponent might be? How does that work?
I mean, ultimately, I'm the one that has to agree to it. I'm the one that has to go in there and fight. So it's a negotiation, just like anything else. Me and Feldman are talk pretty often and are very aligned up on where this whole thing's going. So, but at the end of the day, everything has to be discussed in a business way. I'm represented by First Round Management, so Malky Kawa and Ricky, those guys are going to be, handling a lot of that type of stuff for me. But yeah, I mean, there's no telling what could happen. All I know is it's exciting for the sport. And like you guys mentioned earlier, a lot of people are crossing over. It's like the Wild West is upon us. And we're not quite there yet, but I think in the next year it's going to be Wild West. There's going to be a lot of money thrown away around. There's going to be a lot of crossover fights, a lot of things happening. So I'm just excited, to be a part of such a big new change.
You still a Facebook whiz?
Facebook?
Yeah. Weren't you kind of like one of the dudes that was really, really good at it and early on before it really blew up like a decade ago or something?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I've done for sure. But just like anything else, it's like you get out of something what you put into it. So whenever I got back into fighting, I decided to stop everything else I was doing and put 100% in this. This is not a side hobby weekend type of thing. I don't think I could have won this world title without it. So anything that I've been involved in a lot of different things outside of fighting, but there's nothing like sports to me. There's nothing like being a warrior. Honestly, man, I like this lifestyle a lot better, where I actually get to use my hands. I get to use my spirit and my will just as much as I do my brain.
You've gotten a lot out of it, my friend, and congrats on the win this past weekend. I can't say enough about that comeback story. And whatever the next event may be, the next title defense, obviously we will be there to cover it. And thank you so much for your time today.